Hi, I'm Harry Cohen.
And I'm Connie Fontaine.
Welcome to the Be the Sun, Not the Salt podcast, where we talk about heliotropic living. Today's guest is an amazingly accomplished person, Valorie Kondos Field.
And despite the many accolades that we share that Valorie has earned, she was humble. She was vulnerable. She was willing to tell us when she's been really at her best and when she hasn't. And I loved especially the way she talked about her evolving coaching style and how it translates into parenting and the role that parents play in their kids' lives athletically and beyond. So I look forward to everyone hearing that.
I couldn't agree more, Connie. And for me, what stuck with me is that if I want to bring out the best in the people in my life, I have to show up for them in a way that I think you'll hear Valorie articulate. So without further ado, please welcome Valorie Kondos Field. We're so thrilled to have with us a very esteemed guest, the head coach of the UCLA women's gymnastics for over 30 years with 7 national championships, 519 career wins, 18 conference championships, named the Pac-12 Coach of the Century. We have Valorie Kondos Field joining us today. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn, completely blind, sent her a book. She watched our TED Talk and was so wonderful in a Zoom call with us and said, I would be thrilled to do this. We are just overjoyed and grateful to have you, Valorie. Please welcome Valorie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
We're just happy to have you. I mean, you've brought the real lesson. The compassion and leadership are not separate ideas. And I think being able to talk about that today and share that with our listeners is going to be a lot of fun because of the energy you bring, but a really important message as well.
Thank you. I have to say, I was giggling, Harry, as you were rattling off all those accolades, because it still makes me crack up. It's like, oh, coach of the century. Oh, 7-time national championships. Oh, guess what? I'm the UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame. Well, let's not forget, like, the most fun fact. I've never done gymnastics in my life.
I do love that.
Ballerina.
Well, what's also fun about you, which the people don't know when we got to know you, is that you said, look, I feel like a complete imposter to that point, which is absolutely wonderful for people to hear, because for someone as accomplished as you to quote unquote feel like an imposter, I think it'll help everyone who thinks, I haven't done anything. And I'm just so proud of how humble and modest you are, along with all of your accomplishments.
Thank you. Thank you. I just to piggyback on that a little bit, I had imposter syndrome. I still do. Like when people ask me to speak, I'm like, why aren't they asking Brené Brown? Or because they can't afford her, whatever, or Oprah. But the interesting thing about how I coach other people up when they say they're feeling imposter syndrome is one of the things that I brought to UCLA gymnastics that helped make us a global brand, not just a national, global, was the fact that I knew nothing about gymnastics. And so I brought fresh eyes to our gym and our training and our performances and the crafting the performances. I brought a fresh eye that enhanced the sport. And I'm very proud of that.
You should be. And I think we're going to probably talk more about that later in the podcast, because I want to get into that, the imposter syndrome piece of that, because Harry and I coach each other out of it all the time.
Yeah, I even say this little book I wrote. So tell me this. This is embarrassing for me to say. So Valorie, tell us why you said, okay, I'd be willing to do this podcast with you guys.
The concept of be the sun, not the salt, is something that I was raised with from a fabulous, fabulous mother. I also, to be honest with you, as soon as I read your book, it hit me to like my ancestors, because I'm full-blooded Greek, and Greeks love life, kind of to an extent, maybe it's sometimes, but it really hit me like, be the sun, be that, we call it in Greek, we call it kefi. It's that thing that emanates from you that's just confidence that comes from the spiritual world, and it doesn't come from our secular world. It was like, this is a connection. So when Harry, when you said that, you cold emailed me, it was like, well, yeah, maybe, but we were meant to do this.
Who is this guy?
who is this guy? But I tracked her down and she said, I sent her this book and then she watched the TED Talk and then she said, say a little bit more about, heliotropic. And then we had this lovely conversation, Connie, which you were a part of. And we feel like, oh my God, we're honored and thrilled because of your accomplishments. I mean, we didn't even introduce how amazing you are. I mean, I rewatched your TED Talk again today. I was talking about it with a whole group of young students at University of Michigan. But let me just brag on you a little bit. The coach of the century, a UCLA women's gymnastics coach for 29 years, and seven times national champion, and phenomenal human being and student of John Wooden, friend of John Wooden. I can't say enough about who you are and what you've accomplished, but your TED Talk and its message, again, I watched it, that winning and success and your mission to coach human beings to be great and successful human beings, not just winning teams. It was just really profound. So I'll stop talking and
thank you.
Well, tell us a little about...
Thank you for stop talking. Thank you for all of that.
Yes, thank you. We say that all the time, though. No, I'm just kidding. So, Valerie, tell us about, as you started to prepare for that TED Talk, how you got that message and how you wanted to hone it in, and what were you trying to accomplish? The singular, most important thing you want people to get out of your learnings.
The TED Talk came on the heels of the USA Gymnastics Larry Nassar scandal. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of student athletes that I had coached come forward with impact statements. I had a few of them still on my team at UCLA. I was still coaching. And I just had this, I love aha moments because I don't know about all of you, but to me, an aha moment is something that I knew. It was like a truth that I've known that is revealed. It's not this new physics equation, And I had the aha moment that to ask the question, is all winning success? And it was like, no, it is not. And then I was able to go back on my career. I was the head coach at UCLA for 29 years. And I was able to see the times that we had won that I wouldn't have said we were successful, the times that I had gotten a student athlete to do something or change, but I didn't go about it the right way. And it was demeaning, probably hurtful. And that we may have won, but I couldn't chalk that up as being successful. And so I felt it was a very important question to ask everyone, ask parents in particular, when your child gets an A, when you're asking them about their grades, when you're asking them how many goals did you score on the soccer field, are you just focused on winning? Or are you excited about the success? And I'll just finish with this little bit. It became really clear to me the more I thought about this and talked about it. Winning is tangible. Has an end result. It's a medal. It's a grade.
Yep.
Success are the things that you learn and grow into on the path and the journey to trying to achieve that shiny gold object. But success lasts beyond the win.
Yeah. So instead of the measurement of win-loss, it's something very, very different, much bigger. It's interesting.
I'm so thrilled by your insight and your honest realization, acknowledgement, vulnerably, like, wow, I did a bunch of stuff wrong. As successfully as I achieved stuff in my career, oh my God, I could do it better. I could do this little life of mine better with this insight. I'm already successful or, accomplished, whomever is listening, whether they're a coach or a student athlete or anyone or a parent or kid. I want to learn from what these people are talking about so that I don't have to waste a bunch of years doing it wrong. Let's see if we can do it better, Valerie.
And it comes down to listening to your heart and your gut and your soul and your knowing and your truth. Because I came to the world of athletics I was a ballerina. I knew nothing. And I got to UCLA to be their choreographer in 1982. And then they asked me to be the head coach in 1989. I was like, okay. And I said to the athletic director, I laughed out loud and I said, do you remember, I don't know the first thing about gymnastics. And she looked at me, we called her the Ice Queen. And she said, I trust you'll figure it out. I was like, yeah, okay. So this was 1989. This was before we were talking about mental health and wellness.
Right.
This was dictatorial, authoritative style of leadership.
Yep.
So what I'm so excited about is we're living in a time that's not too far from that, where I would imagine every one of your listeners grew up with an authoritative, dictatorial, transactional kind of leader or parent or coach or someone in their life, and can relate to how things have shifted. And when we really focus on the human being and the development of the human being into, like, I literally would tell people my job had nothing to do with gymnastics. My job was developing champions in life that are going to go out and make the world a better place. My classroom is the gym. And so in any avenue that we're in, or your listeners are in, your children in particular, you're developing little champions that are going to go out and they're going to make the world a better place. And through it, they're going to have this pride, this sense of self and pride that nobody can take away from them, no matter how much salt people want to pour in their little roots. Nobody can take away from them. And yes, you can win the other way, being dictatorial and demeaning, and my way, the highway. I remember my dad saying, just do it because I said so. I was like, well, that's not teaching me anything.
Because I said so, yeah.
But what I love about my story and why I just speak any time I can to whoever wants to listen to me is I proved later on in my career that I could achieve at the highest level doing it a different way, so honoring the human being.
So say that again, and so that people can hear that, which is you can do it. I want you to shout this from the rooftops because you've proven it. You can be a successful, fabulous coach with all the awards, and the teams can win, and be a wonderful human being, which treats people with dignity and respect. And they then go on to treat people with dignity and respect.
Right. Yeah.
So the fact that you've done it, go ahead, Con.
No, I was just going to say, and in that world of athletics, what got you to shift? I mean, there's that point in time that whether it was an aha moment or something else that took you to that spot.
Oh, well, I wish every leader could experience what I experienced. Our team, there was about 20 student athletes and maybe 3 team managers that were all young women students. They asked me for a team meeting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I love team meetings. Yeah, let's sit around and talk. This is cool. And for 2 solid hours, they went around the table and they gave me examples of how my coaching style was hurtful and demeaning.
But you were able to hear that. You were able to both not only not get defensive. The beauty of that is you said, oh my goodness, I need to change. And you did. And that, I mean, the pivot that I hope that perhaps other leaders or parents or people who are listening go, I hope I can get that feedback. If they don't get the gift of that team meeting, I hope they get the can I be listening enough to hear that feedback to pivot and change, which you did.
The key is to be courageous enough to ask yourself the tough questions. And so you have to ask yourself, what is my ultimate goal? So when, as a parent, you're bragging about your child getting into a D1 scholarship school or getting into the Ivies, just take a moment, take a pause and ask yourself, what's my goal? What's the end goal here? Is it so that my daughter or son can get into this school and then they're going to have all these bragging rights? They're going to be able to go out and make more money than if they had gotten into another school. And it all comes down to the shiny gold object. It all comes, you're not like, if you're going to ask yourself, is my child seriously going to learn about grit and resilience and courage and humility and all these really strong characteristics? Are they going to learn that more at an Ivy or a D1 school than they would at a D3, D2 school? No, they're not. It's all education. So what I did in that moment as they were going around this table, and they were very respectful, very respectful, saying, Miss Val, remember when you said this? Well, that really hurt because, and part of my brain, because mind you, this was probably 1991, 92, things still hadn't changed. The transformational style of leadership. So part of my brain was going, I don't care. I'm the head coach. I have the title. I have the salary. I have the corner office. It's my team. You don't like it. Go get another team. And thankfully, the rational side of my brain was asking the tough question. Are you trying to make them feel less than? Are you trying to make them feel demeaned and put down, suppressed? Is your ego that massive that you're not considering how it's affecting another human being? And that shouted the red lights. Wow. No. Okay, Valorie, you got to change.
Yeah.
But the cool part was, not the cool part, the honest part was, I had no idea how to change. I'm like, I didn't grow up in the world of athletics. The people that were winning, the people in our country our Olympic team, gymnastics team, we were beating everybody from a very dictatorial style of national team coaches. Right. Well, I'm a coach. I'm hired to win. I'm not hired to be a mentor or a teacher. I'm hired to win. And that's when I was like, okay, well, if there's nothing more to the world of athletics than winning, I am tapping out because this does not resonate with me. And so I figured out my why. Why was I going to coach? It's not about the ring and the W's and the bragging rights. It's not about, when you look at athletics, you can look at it just as like it's all about saying, aha, we beat you. Haha. I was like, there has to be more to this industry of athletics than haha, we beat you. What is that? And that's when I was like, well, duh, sport is a masterclass and learning all of the really tough life lessons that you don't learn in the classroom. So it's complementary to the classroom. So I'm going to develop champions in life through the sport of gymnastics. My classroom is going to be the gym. And because I was able to recruit talent, because Coach Wooden would always say, you can't win without talent. I had a ton of talent. I knew if I shifted that and if I started filling them up and empowering them from the inside out into these superheroes, I knew that would translate to the competition floor. And it did. In fact, my last few years I coached, when I'd be like on an airplane, I'm sitting next to somebody who doesn't know who I am. And they said, what do you do? And I go, I develop superheroes. And they go, oh, you work in Hollywood. And I'm like, no, I live near Hollywood, but I work in the field of athletics. I develop superheroes.
I'm stealing this. I'm always looking at every podcast that we do. I'm looking for at least one or two or three. Oh, I'm taking that with me. I develop superheroes. You knew that later on in your coaching life, you said, I am going to bring out the best in these people in such a way that they go transform the world. That's what I want to do with this work. Literally, it's the same thing, Valorie. It's the same. Be the sun, not the salt. I want for people to embrace being heliotropic, being so uplifting to others that people think of them as superheroes. How did you become so wonderful? I work at it. But you know what I mean? Go ahead.
But think about that. When you're thinking about superheroes are not into bragging rights. They're not doing what they're doing to say, haha, I saved the world.
Right. Yep.
They're truly about making humanity better. They're saving humanity.
Yep.
So what's our mission? We're trying to make humanity better. This is one of those John Wooden hero moments. He would teach his kids to point to the person who threw them the ball as the assist, as a way of, I want to teach you guys how to recognize others for the achievement that you just made. He was teaching people to be better humans. That's what we want to do. Which you think, well, people don't they already know that? Well, I think we could do better, and I'm no different. I want to be better. I want to get better at this.
You know what? Sadly, and I'm sure that we all agree on this. When you look at everything that we are bombarded with, especially our youth.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about more. You need more money. You need more clothes. You need to be skinnier. You need to be more fit. You need the hotter boyfriend or girlfriend. And what our world tells us is we're not enough.
Yeah.
Just the way we are. And that's why when I look at coaching from an X's and O's, just do the drills and the skills and let's go win. That is really, to me, that's like an external coaching style versus an internal coaching style.
Which is why be the sun, not the salt. I think you found nutritious and delicious for your philosophy of life. You got it.
Because, this is good. This is good. Because as I was being that big, badass coach, right? What was I doing to them? I was pouring salt on them.
Yeah.
Exactly. You asked me, you said, well, isn't salt of the earth a biblical good thing? Yes, it is. But we're talking about the metaphor of salting their roots, of exactly what you said, which is demeaning them, de-energizing them, making them feel like crap. That is what we're talking about. To your point, the insight that you had, I don't want to do that as a coach and as a leader, as a parent. Nobody does. And yet we do.
But time out. That's why I think it's really important to ask that question. Do you? Because it's definitely the easy way to parent and to coach is to say, just do it because I said so.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you were to ask my father, he would have said, yeah, that's exactly how I'm parenting. Right. What's the problem?
Yep.
You know, it got you to stop doing the bad stuff you were doing.
Yep.
What's the problem? Versus my mother, who would take the time to explain why there's a better way.
Yeah.
And I have this conversation a lot now with students about AI.
Oh.
And it's interesting. It's really interesting, the argument that they give for using AI with their schoolwork.
Is there a good argument for that?
To them it is, it's like, just like anything, you have to listen with an open mind and possibly learning something. And, one of the students I just had this conversation with said, you know what, Miss Val, the world is moving so quickly now that when you can utilize something that's going to help produce as good, if not a better product in a shorter period of time, isn't that better use of our time? Then this student threw back at me exactly what I had just said, that time is our only non-renewable resource. So if we're spending infinitely less time, so I can be using that time doing something else, isn't that good?
Yeah, it's not a bad point. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're trying to be great human beings, which is our job in being the sun and not the salt. It's not just for others. And we want to help others be great human beings. As a coach, when, you saw be the sun, not the salt, you said, oh, this is how I was raised. This is how I coach. This is how I lead. Thoughts for our audience on, nuggets of wisdom they're going to say, oh, that I can deploy immediately. That I'm going to do. That little talk that podcast I listened to with that woman, that gymnastics coach, that Be the Sun lady.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
What give them something that you would say, this is so easy and good to do that will help those under their charge?
I think the first thing is, and it's not easy, but it's simple, is to take a moment, a pause, a stillness to ask yourself, what is your end goal with your child? Is my end goal simply to have their room nice and tidy every day because I think that that's important? Or is it taking the time to explain to them why the simple act of making your bed is going to have a compound effect on that sense of pride that you're developing? And so a lot of times I found, like, even with my own parents or with parents of our student athletes that I was close to, the end result wasn't the issue. It's how they got there. And so ask yourself, why is this important? And then how can I help? Okay, let me back up. I have never been a parent. I coached for 37 years at UCLA. And so people say, oh, you were a parent. Like, no, I wasn't, because I went home. The kids, the problem kids, if they were problems, they went to their dorms. I got to go home. So I believe that parenting is the utmost responsibility someone can have on planet Earth. It is daunting. It is overwhelming. And it is not easy at all, just from what I've experienced and what I've observed, which is why this little human you have been granted and blessed to be put in charge of their development. Mm-hmm. And so ask yourself, is all I'm concerned about bragging rights?
Yeah.
And there's one of my favorite books called The Conscious Parent. It's written by a psychologist, Dr. Shefali Sabari. Mm-hmm. And she's so lovely. And she just says, every time you ask your child, did you get an A? It is stroking your own ego. It's not about your child. And so I remember my mom saying, like, when I came home one time from ballet and they posted a new cast for a new ballet. And I told my parents, my father said, did you get the lead? And I immediately, like salt, I shrunk. I shriveled.
Perfect example of salt.
I turned to my mother, and my mother said, and she was like cleaning. She said, oh my gosh, honey, that's so great. That's going to be so much fun. What's the ballet about? Yep. And I started to fill up, telling her what the ballet was going to be about. It was like it happened that fast.
Sun and salt in a moment. Yep. Well, what's beautiful about that story is that that's how easy and that's how hard it is. I asked you the question, what do you do? And you said, well, pause and think about, what is your end goal? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to uplift? Are you trying to bring out the best in people? And what that might then mean is articulate the why, pause before you say the snarky thing, pause before you say the rude, disrespectful thing. Say the thing that would bring out the best in the other, which you just articulated with your mom and your dad, and you still turned out okay. Let me just say, as a parent of fraternal twin boys, I thought parenting had a lot more to do with how they are than how they are. In other words, they come out wired, and we do our best. All parents do our best. And so to that end, coaches, parents, and people, we all try our very best. What I want this podcast to do, which you are doing, is help all of us try to do it a little bit better, whether we're a coach, a parent, a colleague, or some TED talker or a lecturer in somewhere, that we pass on a nugget that makes somebody go, thank you, which I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Con.
Well, no, I was curious. It was such a transformation in leadership style. And I'm curious, some of those nuggets that Harry's talking about, what are some of those nuggets that got you from where you started to where you got to?
One of the most impactful, it wasn't a nugget, it was a boulder, was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I heard, like, my brain exploded. And I'm sure some of you your listeners have experienced this with themselves or with loved ones, but it's this cacophony of very loud noise, of fear. How many more days did I have left to live? Was there going to be a treatment for me? Right. Is it going to be painful? Am I going to lose all my hair? What, like noise. And in the middle of all the noise, I heard very clearly, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And when I speak about this, I tell my audience, I always say, you can translate that as the universe speaking to me or cosmic energy. However you translate, it's fine. It's my story. I knew it was God speaking to me. And I got really snarky with God. And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't know if you heard, and I'm looking like this. I don't know if you heard or not, but I have a potentially fatal tumor in my breast. So this be anxious for nothing thing and
not
grateful,
working.
That's not really sitting well with me right now. And I heard it again. And when I told my husband this story, my husband says, well, God in his wisdom knew he had to tell you twice, so you would shut up and listen. So I knew this was a commandment. But I didn't know how I was supposed to obey. Just like I knew when I sat down with my team, I had to change my coaching style, but I didn't know how. I knew I was not supposed to be anxious and I was supposed to be grateful, but I didn't know how or why. And I went to my doctor the next day And she said to me, if you got diagnosed 10 years ago, we had nothing for you. I would have said, I'm so sorry. You need to go get your affairs in order. But because you're diagnosed in 2014, we have chemotherapy. And if you choose, that's why I love the word choice. If you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, and if you choose to get surgery, I know it's going to work. And in that instant, I understood how I was not supposed to be anxious. It was through gratitude. I didn't have to get chemotherapy. I got to get chemotherapy because I lived at a time that had the chemo. And I live in a country that had the chemo, and I had health insurance going to help me pay for the chemo. I got so excited to get chemotherapy. I called it going to my chemo spa because my spa was someplace I go to get better.
Yeah.
So I know Harry's ready to explode here because I sense that you had the same experience. But that sharing that with my student athletes and with everybody, like every time I speak, they go, you don't need to talk about the breast cancer story. I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Because it resonates with everyone. Switching the word, when you asked for a nugget, switch the word have to get to. And you come from a place of gratitude.
So this is why I know you loved our book. This is why I know you wanted to. This is, I mean, we have a little chapter in there from get to got to. From got to get to. This is the speak fluent gratitude. Yeah. Help people keep perspective. You're just articulated several chapters in this little tiny book, Valorie, and I praise you to the high heavens. You know, I got cancer too. I got the same five year ago, the Boulder nugget. Oh, okay. You know, what am I supposed to do? Mine just keeps recurring. It's a good kind. It comes back and then you deal with it. It comes back and you deal with it. But it's no different. It's the exact same point, which is I'm not going to be anxious about this. When I go get tested, it's a flip it. It's either yes or no. You either have it or you don't. But it's like, oh, well, literally same thing, right. Valorie. Let's help others who get the diagnosis. Hey, move through it. You know, it's not a drag. It's good for us.
Right. I love it when you ask, like, what were the little nuggets? And I like the nuggets are the things that continue to have life. Right. Yeah. And the student athletes that lived through this with me, we had numerous conversations about, you know, be anxious for nothing. I think God misspoke because there are times in life that serves you to be anxious. And I'm like, okay, great. What are those? And then we had somebody that had just come back from Iraq. He was a super fan. And I brought him in and I was like, talk to us about anxiety in the military. Talk to us about when it is helpful and useful. He goes, never. It clouds your clarity and your judgment.
Oh, another beauty. Never. I mean, this is you helping people keep perspective. This is you, again, making other people uplifted, using people's experiences to help others. Your story of cancer, your story of going through it helps all those kids who then, well, what about, isn't it okay to be anxious? No, not that great. It's not that helpful.
Well, the thing is, this is what I just had this conversation with my cousin, who she's typical, I hate to say typical Greek, but it's like all my little aunts, they all sit around, they worry about everything. They have their worry beads, right? And they worry.
For sure.
And she was telling me that, you know, she's got 3 kids and she was worrying about something. I said, Stephanie, God says, be anxious for nothing. And she says to me, oh, I just can't do that. And I said, I understand what you're saying, but I need you to understand it's a choice. You are choosing anxiety and stress. And we have the science and the research to prove that any stress and anxiety only exacerbates the physical ailment. It doesn't help it. It doesn't help anything, Stephanie. So if you want to remain anxious, just own it and say, I'm choosing to be anxious.
Right.
This is why I always say, you know, the being the sun or being the salt is the same choice. Moment to moment, you can be uplifting and kind, or you can be cynical and nasty and disrespectful. Either one. Choice in that moment. It's so true. I love that you are saying it in your own ways. Did your athletes change when you started to share.
Yes.
Yeah. Your vulnerability, your authenticity, just.
Yes. And they said to me, I was able to recruit the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
So I had athletes that had achieved a high level of success since they were like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And those that went through the transformation with me said that having this shift of looking at life differently allowed them to enjoy their sport, their craft, to a level that they had never achieved. And these were Olympians. I'll never forget. I'm an Olympian from the UK. Tell me, Miss Val, I've never had so much fun doing gymnastics in all my life. And it didn't diminish their score. Fun doesn't diminish your score. Okay. Joy, a sense of joy and pride doesn't diminish the end result. It elevates it. And as I was saying to you, I wanted to make a point that student athletes that I had this kumbaya relationship with, but in all my years of coaching, 37 years at UCLA, the student athletes that I did not have a relationship with are the ones that have a very sour taste of their experience with me as the head coach. And I look back, it's like, because this person lived through exactly what this person did. They both were held to the same standards and accountability. I hate it when people say coaches play favorites. Really, my job's to win. Why am I going to play favorites if you can help me score better? Okay. But the difference was I didn't have a relationship with the one that was sour. It was salt with no sun.
Exactly.
The other one I had a relationship with because she met me halfway with a relationship. So I was more eager. And in hindsight, Connie and Harry, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would look at it like as a challenge of how can I develop a trust through a relationship with this person who doesn't trust me, doesn't like me, doesn't trust me, doesn't have a relationship, nothing, And it's like the old saying that we have to live life forward, but what is it about hindsight?
Yeah. Too easy to look back.
But the beauty of regret is that we can look forward with learning from, you know what? I don't have to make that mistake again. I can develop relationships with people going forward. This is the beauty of my life at this age stage, which is, so what? I screwed up. So what? I didn't do that properly. So do the next right thing, which is such a brilliant.
Right. And part of what that next right thing has been is to model what a sincere apology looks and feels and sounds like. A superhero apology. What does that look and feel like? Totally. And to be able to do that sincerely. And then you offer that. It's the gift. The person can accept it or not. But that is the transformation with all of this.
Have you always been a good apologizer? Good.
Yeah. My mom taught me that. I learned it very young, that the power of an apology. And it's so funny because when, as an adult, when I apologize to someone and they choose to not, literally, I don't accept your apology and hold the grudge, it literally is like the adage of drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, right?
Totally.
I'm like, well, okay, I apologize. And to model a good apology, you say it sincerely, heartfelt once.
Right.
Maybe twice. Then you drop it because it's up to that person if they want to continue. The other thing that I really, really, really like about myself, because there's a lot that I don't like, but is I don't hold a grudge. And part of it is because I know I am flawed. I know that I'm hurting people even when I'm trying not to. It's not my intention to. And I love the fact that I have realized that holding a grudge is such a waste of time and energy and mental space and emotion. It's such a waste.
What's interesting is that we've lived this long life. We have all these lessons of our many mistakes like that, like apology, like grudge, and we want to pass them on in the most delicious manner so that more people can get it and they don't have to learn the hard way. Unfortunately, some people have to learn the hard way. And I guess that's just how it is. I would like for this podcast to help people learn quicker, faster,
Well, we need to. We really need to, because we've never experienced a divisive society like we are experiencing
Very
now.
true.
Maybe our ancestors did, but we haven't.
Sure.
And to have these discussions, to be able to, I hate that, like the whole thing, agree to disagree, but to listen to each other, to treat each other with humanity it's not a soft skill. It's a hard ass life skill that's going to be our saving grace. Otherwise, I am very fearful.
Don't be fearful. I mean, everything you just said, I couldn't agree with more, except don't go down to the dark side of, yeah, but what if, yeah, but don't, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to do our part, Valorie. I know you're doing yours. We're doing ours. We're doing it together. If we can influence a few more people, if we start with ourselves, to be, I'm not going there. Don't you think it's awful? Aren't you worried about, you know what? I'm not. I'm not, because here's what I can control and here's what I do. Aren't you worried about, don't you think it's going to be, I'm not going there. I'm not going to enter into the world of your fear about any of this.
I think a part of something that I've been working very diligently on, conscientiously on, is listening.
Yeah.
And we are bombarded with so much noise that it's not natural for us to silence our minds and and just listen to somebody, especially when we don't agree with them.
Right.
Okay, Cohen, I cut you off.
Well, no, you didn't cut me off at all. There was one of the things that you said was going back. One of the things you would do is work on a specific relationship. And I was just thinking about how hard that can be sometimes between a leader and whether it's a subordinate or a coach and an athlete. Are there concerns? Are there blurry lines about how do you build a relationship with somebody without crossing any lines? Like being too friendly, being too permissive, just that softness, what people will refer to as a soft skill. And it's really not. This isn't a soft skill. This is a necessary skill to be a leader.
I think that it's being able to craft one or two open-ended questions, such as, what would you like me to know about what you experienced, what you've been carrying for the last 25 years or so? What would you like me to know? And then sitting back, stilling my energy so that I'm not like this as they're talking, wanting to butt in, so, wanting them to shut up so I can go, yeah, but, and listening with all of my senses, absorbing, and honestly not needing to respond. And just say, I hear you.
Because leading the air, that's hard, I think, for a lot of people. And I think we should all know that. Asking a question means you have to sit back and listen if you really want to know.
The question you asked, beautiful. The question, what is it you want me to know? I'm going to listen deeply, Olympically, without speaking, to try and understand what it is you want me to know. I love that. It's a nugget people can take. People who are listening can improve any relationship,
That's true.
Personal or professional. What is it you would like me to know?
Yep. In the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because to your point here, I can see that even at home as a child-parent relationship or husband-wife. I think it's a great open-ended question.
Well, think about it. You've got a 3-year-old that's like going ballistic over something, screaming, crying, and instead of assuming that you know why the 3-year-old is pitching a fit, to be able just calmly grab their little face and say, what do you want me to know? Tell mama what you want me to know.
I love that. I love that.
So, my God, I'm so grateful to you, Valorie, for having met you. We have a relationship now which will continue in perpetuity till we both croak. And we're going to keep doing more good together.
Well, partly because she has so much energy around it. I think, Valorie, for me, your demonstration of wanting to do the right thing, spread this, share your wisdom, share your nuggets, your journey, that has been very energizing to me.
Thank you. There is a Michael Gervais, a psychologist. I love his podcast. I think he coined the term FOPO, fear of other people's opinions.
Oh, that's good.
And
that's good.
Yeah. And anytime I set out for a venture like this, like I'm writing another book, the demons start in. Well, what do you think you have to say that hasn't already been written?
Yeah.
Well, who's going to buy the book? Well, and being able to practice silencing the noise, the negativity is life altering.
Love that.
And I wonder, do you think that there's anybody that's living that doesn't hear those demons, that doesn't hear the negativity?
No.
I'm sure there's some narcissists out there, but you're not looking at any of them right now because we talk about that same thing all the time.
But no, they talk, whether do you listen to it or ignore it? That voice, that chatter, there's a great author wrote a book called Chatter. His name is Ethan Cross. The negativity, the voice continues. We don't have to listen to it. We don't have to give it any audience. So I want to support you in the next book. You've got tons to say and deliver to the world. Keep on spreading it. I want to hear a couple of more things from you and a couple of that you've stolen or used from John Wooden, one of my mentors and a person that I admire enormously and who you had an intimate relationship with and knew him and his family very, very well. Coach John Wooden was the UCLA men's basketball coach who won 10 national championships in 12 years. But more importantly, for me, beyond that, was the way he coached, how he coached, and what he left the world in terms of how human beings were way more important than just winning. Could you speak a little bit about some John Woodenisms and stuff he gave you?
Absolutely. I was beyond blessed. My husband and Coach and I and Coach's daughter and son, we were like family and we were very, very close. He was also my mentor. And it's interesting. Oh, well, look, here's his book. And you can see so I teach a class on leadership at UCLA, and you know who is right there with me.
Good stores.
All the time. But Coach Wooden, I think people, more importantly, this is like, if you know anything about John Wooden, it's about his pyramid of success. And very briefly, just for your listeners, the apex of the pyramid is competitive greatness, which is being able to bring your best when your best is needed. The cornerstones are industriousness and enthusiasm. So hard work and effort, attitude and effort, So when I speak to kids, I'm like, I hope someday you really study this, but for now, just bring a great work ethic and a great attitude. And everything you do is going to shine. But the interesting part about that is people think he developed that for his student athletes to help him win his national championships. He didn't. He developed this over 15 years, and he developed it for parents because he was also a teacher. He was an English teacher.
Wow.
And he was tired of parents determining the success of their children by their grades.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing about Coach Wooden, he took a lot of, he was very devout, so he took a lot from the Bible, but his most beloved American was Abraham Lincoln. And it's so funny when I read about Abraham Lincoln and his work and his quotes and all that, I'm like, that's Coach Wooden. Like, Abraham Lincoln stole from Coach Wooden. And the same with Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was Coach's, all-time living hero. And I said to him one time, I said, Coach, I'm not like saying this is a negative thing, but it's like, okay, you've been saying this over and over and over and over. Abraham Lincoln stole that from you. And he's like, Valorie, God love Coach. He's like, Valorie, no, honey, please call me honey. It's called truths. Oh, and anything that is a truth has been passed down since the dawn of man. Mm-hmm. We just need people in our current generations to put them in a vernacular that we can understand.
What would be your mom's favorite truth? If I were to ask your mom today, if there's one thing you want everyone to listen to on Valerie's podcast, what's that one truth from mom?
The one truth from my mother that I would check myself with was love. And love is the most important. Coach Wooden said that, most important word in in any language. Mm-hmm. And it's when you come from a place of love, especially for yourself, mm-hmm. it allows you then to love others. Mm-hmm. And this is a really hard concept that I speak with a lot of younger people that get mean girled. They get haters. They get people saying horrible, snarky things. And to try to explain to them that those people that are saying those things, they don't love themselves. It's not coming from a place of positivity and love and strength. It's coming from hurt and pain. Hurt people hurt people, you know?
Yep.
So my mother, sadly, my mom died when she was 53. I was 25. But literally to this day, every time I am in a situation with another person, especially a younger person, I sense my mother and this love. And I'm not fond of the term tough love because we've come so far. The pendulum has swung so far, in my opinion, that accountability now is a negative thing. Instead of, I look at exactly the opposite. Like, I'm paying you a huge compliment if I'm holding you accountable.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
But to your point, you can do it with love.
Yeah.
It's a form of love.
Yeah.
We often end these podcasts by asking you, is there anything, this is the last thing you'll ever get to say to the world. The entire world is going to listen to this. So take a pause. This is it. Now, I actually think you already did it with what your mom said, but take a moment. You get to say anything you want, but you get the last word.
Okay. If there was one thing that I wanted our student athletes and our coaching staff to get out of being a part of our program, was the understanding that every single thing you do in life, unless you have a mental disability, everything, every action, everything you speak, everything you do, how you walk into a room, how you say hello to someone, how you respond, whether you choose to sit back and pause, whether you choose not to be anxious or not, every single thing you do in life is a choice. And every choice starts with your thoughts that you choose. And this is where it gets tricky. You can choose your thoughts. You can choose the thoughts to feed, and you can choose the thoughts to starve.
Yep.
And having the discipline and the wherewithal of that choice, which means, as we've talked a lot about on this podcast, is practicing the pause to be able to choose your response versus reacting. It will liberate your life. And when my student athletes would get that, the freshmen rarely understood that. I had so many freshmen come to me one-on-one and say, Miss Val, I just can't help it when my mind goes to mean girl. I'm like, oh, you can imagine the field day I had with that one, right? I'd take a deep breath and I'm like, well, let's talk this through. It was usually halfway through their sophomore year. It would click. And they would come in my office and they'd say, I get it. I get it. And you know what? Me understanding that I am in control of my actions, starting with my thoughts, that I'm not leading from my emotions, but I'm leading from my thoughts and choosing my thoughts.
Yep.
Miss Val, I'm no longer a victim. It's not the teacher's fault. It's not my professor's fault that I got a bad grade. I sit in the back and I sit scrolling through social media the entire class. They start having this awakening. And by them making different choices, starting with the thought, I call them thought bubbles. You feed the negative thoughts and you insert. And I don't like when people say, well, just don't think that. Like with be anxious. Okay, this is what we're going to finish with. Be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. Going back to that. You can't just tell yourself, don't be anxious, don't be anxious, don't be anxious. The mind doesn't work like that. The mind has to be thinking about something. So instead of thinking that you're just going to get rid of a thought, you put in a different thought and you feed that thought over and over. And even if you don't believe it, you feed it.
Yep.
I am enough. Like, I've never thought that I was really smart. And my mom would always tell me I'm smart. And I was like, my brother was a rocket scientist. No wonder I didn't think I was smart, right? And so my mom just said to me, just tell yourself you're smart. And so it didn't translate to my grades, but it translated to me being able to learn more and understand because the junk got out of the way so I could actually learn.
Love that.
Oh, I love that too. I'm hoping that the people listening in the sophomore decade of their lives have the shift that the young sophomores have. So when they're 30s or 40s or whatever their sophomore decade is, they go, oh, now I know what it means.
Yep.
Now I know how to live.
It's a gift you gave all of your student athletes, and it's a gift you've given to us and to our listeners. So Greatly appreciated.
To be continued.
Thank you. This was fun.
Totally. Thank you again, Efeistopoli. Thank you very much. And we will be in collaboration in some form or fashion. We don't know what form that'll take or what fashion that'll take, but let's keep working together, Valorie.
Great.
I love it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
At Be the Sun, Not the Salt, our mission is to spread this message and make the world a better place. In our podcast, we hope to share stories that nudge each one of us to be our best self. If you heard something today that nudged you, inspired you, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at stories@bethesunnotthesalt.com. And who knows, we may feature you on an upcoming episode.